So, Sonny, thank you for being on the show with me today. Tell us a little bit about yourself personally and professionally.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I've been following you for a long time, actually. So I'm Sonny, and I am a former Royal Marine Commando, and then I went into the British Special Forces as a reservist. And then after I did that, I started working in the world of corporate espionage as a surveillance operator. It was a very interesting time. And then I moved into executive protection, where I still work today, protecting wealthy people around the world. And I've also started a company called Six Sight CO, where I teach situational awareness techniques and training mainly to the general public, as well as some other tactics that I've picked up along the way that include like espionage drills and general protective training.
Wow, so it sounds like you have quite a lot of experience being a protector. When you first popped up on Instagram, I started following you and realizing, hey, this dude knows exactly what he's talking about. So I feel like this conversation with us has been a long time coming. So I'm finally glad to sit down and at least sit across from you, computer to computer, here to finally talk to you. You've showed us a lot about what you've done in your career, and you've got a lot of experience in executive protection. What are some of the tactics that you have learned professionally that you are applying to your personal life?
Since I've begun doing executive protection, it's been a bit of a different reality to what you see in the movies. For me, I've been on my own, and because I'm British, I have not been able to carry a firearm. So that leaves me with just myself and my brain to deal with the situations and keep my principles safe. So the main thing that I've learned to use as the most effective tool is situational awareness. And that's the reason why I've started my whole Instagram, TikTok, and all of this sort of stuff, because it's so effective at deterring and spotting threats and avoiding trouble in the first place. And going down that route, one of my favorites is actually tactical positioning, which is actually derived from my executive protection training. Because if you're standing or sitting in a good position, then you're already set up, even if you are daydreaming or slightly distracted, to spot a threat approaching or to react to a situation when otherwise you could be caught off guard. So that's a habitual change that I try to push quite a lot. So I think it's a very important one. It's an easy one to make as well.
Right. And you're putting yourself in position to be successful, even as you said, if you're daydreaming or something like that, or goodness, you see one thing that turns out to be nothing, but the real threat is over here. If you have tactical positioning down, then you should be able to do that. Give us an example. Let's say you walk into the average coffee shop, in the world. There's a counter, there's a couple of tables, and there's a main door. Where are you going to position yourself there so that you can see threats coming?
So yeah, there's a number of principles that I just try to teach. And rule number one is protect your back. So you want to change that 360 degree of um, up, like visionary arcs, to 180 degrees, so you half it immediately. So if you've got your back protected, then you can easily and effortlessly see all the goings on in the environment. And also you want to face the direction of the likely threats. So in a cafe, that would be the entranceway, so you can pretty easily clear that room as you enter. You don't even have to do much to spot people in there that may spark your intuition. But the main thing is the doorway and who's coming into that environment. And you can, if as long as you're facing that direction, you don't even have to look up. You can catch a glimpse of them in your peripheral vision, or just get a general idea if there's any sudden movements or unusual behavior. You should be drawn to that. When if you had your back to them, then you would be completely oblivious.
Very
And I
cool.
also like to do that when I'm with my family. That's a big
Hmm.
one. When you're choosing a table with your family in a restaurant, just sit in the best tactical position, because you are the protector there. Whether you like it or not, that's your designated role. And
Right.
that doesn't mean that you have to go in guns blazing all the time. It just means that you have to be aware of the surroundings and have contingency plans in place. And that's part of what I like to teach. Yeah.
Very good. Is there a story from your time professionally doing the executive protection that really kind of illustrates for us as parents why we need to be situationally aware?
I do have a little story. I can't talk about who I was protecting, but it was back
Sure.
in London. And a lot of the stuff I did was when celebrities would come into town to do a movie premiere and a load of press junkets. So I was with a famous actress, and the 2 weeks task had gone smoothly, and I was just escorting her back to Heathrow Airport. So we got out of the car and walked through the paparazzi into the airport, and then to the first class area, which was sectioned off. There's only people with first class tickets could enter there. And she went to check her bags in, and I was standing in a good tactical position at that time, so I could see the whole room. And then she asked me to find the address of the hotel that she was going to go to. So I got my phone out and I actually turned to engage with her. And for just maybe 10 seconds, I was completing the task she asked me to do. And then all of a sudden, out of my peripheral vision, a person grabs my principal, who is a famous actress. And for just a second, my whole world just caved. I couldn't believe that I'd let this happen. And it turned out it was actually her manager, a close friend of hers, who I also knew. But because I'd got distracted in that little split second, this person had managed to close that distance and get a hold of my principal, which could have been the worst case scenario. Luckily, I was in an enclosed area, and that's why my guard was down a little bit. But it just rocked me personally to know that I'd let that happen. And the moral of the story is stay away from distractions, and especially the cell phone. It really sucked me in. And because my principal was boss at the end of the day, she asked me to do something. I let go of, I basically just dropped my awareness level when I should have been focusing on the task at hand at that time.
Right. I've talked to people like Spencer Corson, who's done executive protection, Byron Rogers, those guys, and they talk about, being executive protection does mean that you are this protector, but it also means you do work for your principal at the end of the day. So you do have to go get coffee. You do have to look up hotel rooms and all that sort of stuff. So that's some of the stuff that I don't think people realize unless they talk to somebody like you and realize that, you have to do these other things as well.
Yeah, it's not such a glamorous job in reality. It's long hours, and like you have to carry their bags. You are just a hired help, and they are usually quite wealthy billionaires or celebrities, and you are nothing to them. If you don't do what they ask, they replace you, and that's the reality of the role. But there is some good parts to it. You do get to travel and get in those VIP areas and mingle with people, but yeah, it's not like it is in the movies.
Right. It's not. So, you talk about, teaching parents and trying to educate families. What advice would you give parents in order to protect themselves and their children? What's the first thing you tell folks?
I would say if you're listening to this podcast, you're already designating yourself as the head of security for your family, and you don't have to be a man. You can be anyone. And as long as you are taking that role on board, then that's a good thing. And learning in any aspect is a good idea. You don't have to be like a steely-eyed, absolute dagger between your teeth killer, because that's the fighting a way out of a situation is the last resort. That's what we don't want to get to. It's all these soft skills that build up to that point is what you want to learn. And situational awareness is the main one for me. And there's a lot of other little niche that I try to bring under that umbrella that isn't typically situational awareness. But yeah, learning the basics of security and just being aware of your surroundings, and also knowing when to switch on a little bit more, knowing when it's the most vulnerable times when you're out walking with your family, late at night. That's when you need to step up into that protector role a bit more. And your family don't even need to know that you're doing that. You don't need to warn them or alert them a lot of the time. You just need to recognize it yourself and then step into that role.
Right. So it's good to be vigilant. It's bad to be hyper vigilant because we don't want our brains in that fight mode all the time with the knife in the teeth, like you said, that sort of thing, because that can detract from the experience that you're trying to have with your family. Just you mentally, you've probably had way more experience than I will ever have at trying to be in a moment and also predict what's going on mentally. How stressful is that for you now?
For now it's not so bad, but it is taxing, like you said, and you can't expect to be able to be on high alert all of the time. It's just you just can't do it. And the best operators I've ever worked with, they know they can't do it either. You just have to prioritize your alertness levels, and also like you said, you don't want to be paranoid. We're not walking through war zones all of the time. And a lot of my training, I'm trying to taper it down to everyday life, because I'm not teaching people to go into Afghan at the end of the day. I'm teaching the
Right.
threats that we encounter on the streets that we live in. And there's a big difference, obviously. Yeah, so.
Right. So as a dad, what kind of lessons are you teaching your daughter so that she's going to be able to protect herself?
From a young age, I definitely am going to try and get her into jiu-jitsu, because that's my opinion is the most fun and also the most useful of all the martial arts, because you're under stress positions, and you're learning how to deal with bigger, stronger opponents. But aside from that, I'll do little games and also just drip feed bits of information throughout her life, not being over the top, but also testing her at times when she gets a bit older and she's old enough to use public transport. And I will send her out on little exercises. She won't know that, but
Mm-hmm.
I will be saying, can you get to grandma's house using public transport? And I'll just use it in increments so that she gains the experience being out in environments, because a lot of it is experience. It's hard to teach experience in a setting like over a
Mm-hmm.
computer or even in a seminar, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's good to have a fighting background, or know, have some moves of what to do, but also that is the last resort. So I will teach a lot of situational awareness again. I'm going to keep saying situational awareness.
Oh,
Say
that's
that.
okay. Everybody who's listening to this show, you already pointed out that, the people listening to the show realize that they're the head of security for their family. And that is something that I like to talk about a lot and that's seeing the threat before it really develops. So you kind of shared with us that you've been all over the world. In your experience in going around different places, different cultures, do you see like a common place where most threats occur? It can be in a different culture, be different architecture. Is there just something that you can go every place and say, okay, I know this particular place is going to be trouble?
Well, I would say in any city, wherever you are in the world, you're not safe at certain times and in certain parts. So even in Western countries like in America and where I'm from in London, you have extremely wealthy areas, and then a few stones throw away, you can really run into a lot of trouble. And you just be wary of that. And it's, for me, it's times of the day, nighttime, and public transport is where we're going to see more street crime and being followed away from these venues. And if you're a tourist in any area, looking like a tourist is a big no-no. Trying to go down the grey man philosophy is a big deal, because it's all about the risk versus reward for the bad guy. If they can see some valuables on you, or they can see that you're a tourist, you're unaware, then you're easy pickings. If you can try and sway the balance in your favor by not looking like a tourist, looking like an insider to the environment, then all of these things pay in your benefit when you're not aware of those prying eyes that could be observing you for criminal activities. Because we all walk through, I like to call it the predator's hunting grounds
Mm-hmm.
throughout our lives. And most of the time, we won't even see that predator who's eyeing us up, sizing us up to see whether we're worth their time, whether there are valuables on display, whether we look strong and confident, which is a positive, or whether we look a bit weak and feeble or nervous, which is a positive for them, because they know that you're more likely not going to fight back or cause them any problems.
Cool. You were talking about predators and how sometimes we will see them, but most of the time we won't. Are there some common characteristics that you see in people that are these predators?
To be honest, yeah, and this goes down into the profiling aspect, which I teach a lot, and I've been taught about it a lot. And obviously, law enforcement catch a bad rap for profiling. I'm not talking about racial profiling. I'm talking more about, first of all, is gender. If that person's a man, then they're more likely to be violent or sexual
Right.
offenders, and that's just a fact we cannot ignore. We
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't ignore. And also age range, like 15 to 30 is a general age range that there's more testosterone, and that's a lot more prone to violence.
Right.
But when you're judging people quickly on the street, which is my definition of profiling, also street clothing, like hoodies and jeans and lower income clothing, maybe baggy and stuff like that. Easy concealment, easy to hide your face or hide weapons. These sorts of clothing things will draw my attention and make me give more attention to this person over people that are wearing a three-piece suit and carrying a briefcase, because obviously they don't really need to rob people on the streets and things like that. It's quite an in-depth topic, but
Sure, yeah.
profiling is definitely something you should do when you're trying to determine whether the likelihood of someone being a threat to you. And also, you don't have to justify that to anyone else. It's all done inside your own head. So you can have your own prejudices, which some of them are valid, some are not, but it's your decision at the end of the day. It's your safety that's on the line.
Right. And there was one time I was on an elevator with two other guys, and these dudes are, like both of them are 6'6". They're half a foot taller than me. They're carrying all their tools. We get on the elevator together at this hotel. I don't know who they are. And there's this lady in a business suit, and she's walking towards the elevator in this hotel. And she looks at all three of us and stops and actually out loud says, "No," and turns around and walks away. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm just trying to go back to my room. I'm sorry, ma'am, if I have, but that was her decision. And, at the end of the day, I respect her for doing that,
Yeah.
because, she wasn't going to feel comfortable. And I understand that. I learned a little from that situation. So, but that was just one of the funny, she just out loud looked at us and said, "No." And I was like,
Yeah, she could have been a bit more covert about it, but yeah, maybe. No, but that's good. She listened to her intuition. That's a good thing, and I'd be very proud if my family made decisions based on their
Mhm.
intuition, on an inkling sort of feeling that they don't like something, then they get out of that situation. That's the best way to avoid a problem, I believe.
Right. And another point I wanted to bring up, and you talked about profiling, and everything you said is like, this isn't racial profiling, it's behavioral profiling, right? It's how the person acts, their chosen clothing, and things like that. There's nothing not politically correct about it. It's just human behavior, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And one of the two of the big points that I like to touch on, because there's if you ever read Left of Bang, which I'm sure you have, most people in this industry have, and all the other situational awareness experts, it goes really in depth about body language cues and things. But some of the main ones that I like to talk about is that person acting naturally.
Hmm.
Does that person have a reason to be there? This day and age, you don't usually see a fighting age male, a young man, dressed in street attire, just standing on the side of the street, not using a cell phone and not associated with a task, not with anyone. And especially if they're practicing situational awareness as well, looking around the street, then you have to ask questions why, what they actually do. And unnatural behaviors as well. You can define it in many ways. There's many different cues, but if someone's just behaving strangely, then that should draw your attention. And we can all see strange behavior or unnatural behavior, maybe stalling or pacing back and forth, target glancing. These sort of things are not natural, and we will be alerted to them if we are just looking for them.
Right. It's funny. I went shopping with my wife for Christmas last year, and we were walking around the mall, and I didn't have my phone out. So I'm always looking around. I actually enjoy people watching and trying to get those skills up for behavioral analysis. And so I found myself sitting on this bench looking around at this area, and every person is on their phone, and I'm not. So I was the anomaly in that situation. So I actually pulled my phone out to actually try to look like everybody else while still trying. And it didn't look, I'm sure it didn't look natural at all, which is to your point. So yeah, it's funny because cell phones, as you've mentioned multiple times through this, really do capture our attention. And being in public. So sometimes if you see somebody who's not using a cell phone, they're watching somebody or they're watching what's going on around them. But why are they doing it? I think
Yeah,
that's your check down to your next question. On
definitely.
yeah,
Oh,
on
sorry.
your I'm sorry, am I cutting you off here? What do you,
Oh no, I was going to say, yeah, definitely. from working in the corporate espionage world as a surveillance operator, my job was to follow a target and document what they were up to with a small team. And a lot of the time, that target was doing something in a building or somewhere I couldn't get. So you're just sitting in an environment watching, and you're literally observing the goings on, and you see how unaware most people are and how much they use their cell phones. And you really do get to see what human behavior is like, especially when you're following a target as well. Like most of the time, these people don't ever look behind themselves. I could be like 2 meters behind them for half an hour and they still wouldn't even know if I wanted to push the boundaries that far, you know. So it's an eye-opener working in that industry as well.
You know, that segues right into my next question. You had an awesome video the other day on Instagram talking about shoulder checks. And I think that kind of fits with what you're talking about. People don't look behind them. Tell us what that is and how we can get good at that.
Well, shoulder checks for me is it's a tactic used by executive protection operators, and I was taught it in my training, and also in the military. There's a 5s and 25s checks for IEDs and other threats when you're in Afghan and stuff. But you don't have to be doing it. For me, is the way I teach it is when you're stepping into a new environment. Say you're walking out of a doorway into the parking lot after work at night, or you're stepping in out of the train station on your way back from work, then these are switch on times, which is another concept that I teach, which is like the times when you need to switch on and start paying attention when you're most vulnerable. But the shoulder checks is just like when you're crossing the street, you're naturally going to look both ways, or you should do. Then you should naturally check over your left shoulder and check over your right shoulder. And there's different levels to it. So the best one to do is like a 5s and 20s or near far. So the first check is about 5 to 10 yards. And as you come back round to the other side, then you're looking further afield, 20 to 25 yards. And you're literally clearing that whole area. And it works in 2 ways. You're going to spot any potential threats. But secondly, you're going to not look like an easy victim. And if anyone is eyeing you up, watching you as a potential target, they're going to know that you can't be crept up on, and that you're going to make eye contact or spot that person. And then, yeah, you've just pretty much deterred the threat there and then. And most of the time, I believe that you will deter the threat because they are looking for easy targets. They don't want any trouble more than they can handle anyway.
Right. And you make a fantastic point there about deterrence. I feel like that's a really undervalued part of keeping yourself safe. Everybody thinks, oh, I should see the threat coming, and then we just jump right to fighting. And that's not the case. Just you said, with the shoulder checks, you're just going to say, hey, I'm not going to be an easy target. I'm not your guy. Move on to somebody else.
Yeah. And I encountered this quite a lot. I've encountered it. I've just moved to Costa Rica, and now I'm going down to the beach on my own just to do my own reconnaissance. And they say you don't go down to the beach at night, and I'm moving closer to the beach at night. And yeah, there's groups of guys on the streets. I make eye contact with them briefly, and then I monitor where they are. And I was being looked at the other day, a couple of days ago, and I was just, yeah, I'm not fazed by this. You can try it, you ain't going to get nowhere. But that attitude, they see that, they know what's what, and that's how it works in this sort of world for them. If I was to put my head down and look a bit like cower away a little bit, they might think, right, this person can be rolled over quite easily. And it goes a long way. And there's also, if you're not a fighting sort of person, there's the fake it till you make it philosophy. And you just act confident, stand up tall with your shoulders back. It goes a long way. It's like peacocking in the animal kingdom. Like we've used it, species use these tactics, so we should use them too.
Right. My dad taught me, I guess maybe I was in middle school or high school, pretty much the same thing. It's like, if you just walk around with your chin up and your shoulders up, nobody's going to pick on you. Nobody's going to bother you. And sure enough, no one ever really did. And so that's a whole method of just walking around, making sure that your head's up, that you can see your chin's up, and you're going to be able to deter people. But another thing you talked about, and this was something that I found very interesting when I was honing my skills on situational awareness, and that was making eye contact. I always thought, like in the movies, like James Bond, he doesn't really look, he kind of glances over his shoulder, that sort of thing. But tell us, what happens psychologically when you make eye contact with somebody who could be a threat?
Well, you're just letting them know that you know that they're there, and also you're just showing that you're not phased. You're
Mhm.
comfortable, and that's a big deal. And if you're just glancing eye contact, you're not trying to stare them out, because obviously that can be a bad thing. And as a male, it can be seen as a confrontation. You definitely don't want to be doing that. But just glancing briefly and then looking ahead, keeping your head up, not looking down at the ground, because that's seen as kind of how do you say,
Submissive.
submissive? Yes.
Hmm.
Submissive. And for me, I came from a bit of a fighting background growing up. That was like the heritage that I had in England, and I don't hide away from that in my training, because the experience has been quite beneficial. But looking at someone briefly in the eyes, like, you don't have, it's not a confrontation, but you are just saying, yeah, I know you're there, but I'm unfazed, and that's that, really. Yeah, do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
If I was to shy away and keep my head down, then I'm saying I'm not prepared to protect myself at the
Hmm.
end of the day. That's what they see, and we have to think in their eyes, in the predator's mindset, because they are predators. That's what they are.
Exactly. So you have an online course for women's self-defense. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's called Women's Self-Defense Without Fighting, and it goes into all of these tactics based around situational awareness. There's a little bit of espionage sort of stuff in there to detect a follower if you're being followed late at night home, and how to escape or alert others to your situation. And there's a lot of stuff that I've been quite lucky with my career. I've spanned across different disciplines, so I've been able to merge all this stuff together and collate it. So this first course is directed for women, but the information in there is amazing, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not taught, I haven't seen it taught in a lot of other places. But the good thing is I put it on my Instagram, and it's on my website as well, but it's free to anyone, and also pay what you can. So if you're doing all right and you're not struggling, then you can pay a little bit. But if you need this information, say you're at university or college, or a young lady, or man, then you can get that course for free, and you can learn some good information. And basically, I just want to help people. It's also good for protectors to take the course and then filter that information down, because the big hurdle that I've encountered is the people that need this information are not out seeking it until they have a bad experience. So it's our job to try and get the important information to the people that need it the most.
Right. Absolutely. So, Sonny, I appreciate all that you're doing online and what you're doing in your life. Tell people where they can find out more about you.
So I'm very active on Instagram, Six Site CO, and also TikTok. I have the biggest following, but yeah, TikTok's a bit different.
It is.
The youngsters on there. I'm trying to reach the young crowd. I'm trying to
Hmm.
get a message out there and just teach them the basics of a lot of these in-depth concepts and theories that we both learn about and we're interested in. So yeah, I'm active on there, and I have a website, sixsite.co. And I'm open to discussions, and anyone that ever asks me questions or private messages me, I always answer back and give my advice. So if anyone has a situation that they've encountered, and sometimes I do videos on these good questions that I hear, because I want to hear from my audience, and,
Hmm.
and know what problems they encounter, so we can try and get through it together. And also, any protectors out there that want to take the course and critique it, it's a work in progress. I'm trying to get the best that I can get out there. So it's never finished, and there will be more courses coming soon too.
Very good. You're not satisfied where you are. You're always wanting to push to do better. I like that, Sonny. Buddy, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks very much.